Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing my September reading wrap-up. I read 4 books during September, which I thought was a really good amount, seeing as though I started back at college and I feel like getting back into that routine is really difficult, so I never really read a lot during September, but I thought that 4 books was really good. There was quite a high standard as well, so I'm going to get into what I read and afterwards you can share with me what you read in September. So the first book that I read in September, right at the start of the month, was My Heart Goes Bang by Keris Stainton. The cover for this hasn't been announced yet, but I'll leave a link in the description to the blog where it will be announced in a few weeks because I've seen it and it is really gorgeous. I loved this book. I read it in an entire night. I stayed up until the earlier hours to read it because once I'd read a few chapters I could not put it down. I was obsessed with it. It is a YA book, but it is more of the older end of YA, so the characters are about 19 or 20, which I think is an amazing thing. I wish there were more books like that within YA. That's not new adult in the sense that it's all like erotica, because usually when authors publish new adult books you feel like it's just 50 Shades of Grey but with younger characters, and I don't find that very realistic whatsoever. But the way that My Heart Goes Bang and the way that Keris writes about her characters in a very realistic, relatable way, it goes into the lives of a few different main characters. My favourite was Izzy. I loved her. I can't wait until the book comes out and you can all meet these characters because they did feel really realistic. They felt like they were my best friends by the end of the book. I felt like I knew them so well, and they were all very different too. So you can't read this yet, it's not out until next year, but in the meantime I think it would be great if you read Counting Stars by Keris Stainton, which is her earlier book. I loved this one too. I thought it was absolutely amazing. It's one of my favourite UK YA books of all time. I just think that she has a real knack for bringing the characters to life on the page and making them feel like you've never read a book like it before. I love her books so much. I've read so many of them now. I'm always going to love her. She is amazing and I'm so excited for you all to read My Heart Goes Bang when it comes out next year. After that I read a very different book. It was Waverley by Sir Walter Scott. This was very heavy reading. I started reading this in August but I read it on my Kindle, and this is the kind of book where you need the notes. You need to get a physical edition or some kind of edition where you can flick through the pages back to the notes section, because there's a lot in here that you'll miss otherwise. For example, there is this character called the Baron of Bradwardine who basically talks in a mixture of French and Latin, and I don't speak either of them particularly well, so I had to keep reading the notes. I would definitely recommend a physical copy of this. If you know Outlander, you'll recognise a lot of the political environment in this book because it's set around the same time and it follows a main character called Edward Waverley who is English, but he goes to Scotland and it's very chivalric, very much. He is, I don't want to say he's the brave knight, but he's kind of built up to be that kind of character, and as the book goes on that depiction of him changes. It was a very interesting book. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everyone. I don't think everyone will enjoy it. It was very heavy. It took me a good part of the month to read because I couldn't read it all in one go. It took me ages just to read one page because I had to go back to the notes. I had to try and work it out in my head because his prose is quite long and complicated. So I gave this 4 stars. I don't think everyone would give it that. I feel like some people would give up with it quite easily, but it's not going to be the last Walter Scott book I read. I really liked his prose, I really liked his descriptions of the environment, and I didn't hate it, which was really good. So I quite liked it. I don't want to say I loved it, it's an unusual book, but it was very good in my opinion. Then I read All the Crooked Saints by Maggie Stiefvater, and I say read, but I couldn't actually finish this. I did not enjoy it. I thought the prose was absolutely stunning, really beautiful in typical Maggie Stiefvater fashion, but the plot was, well, there wasn't a plot. It was all over the place. I felt like it was supposed to be unpredictable, but because it was so unpredictable, it was hard to follow what was going on. I didn't care about any of the characters. I felt like it was quite stereotypical. I didn't feel like the depictions of the characters were very true to how the characters would have been. And it was set during the 60s, and I felt that quite jarring because I wasn't sure of the history and how that really contributed to the story. So I was very disappointed with this. I did think that the prose was beautiful. I think that Maggie Stiefvater's books are beautiful, but I felt like too much attention was paid to the prose in this, and so you just didn't get a story. So it opens up with this talk of miracles and wavelengths, and then you meet the characters and they have a radio show and they have people come, kind of pilgrims to them, and they perform miracles on them or help them to perform miracles, but there was no science behind it. And I feel like with Maggie Stiefvater's other books that doesn't matter, but I felt like with this one it did, because I didn't have enough background there to fully understand the world she was trying to create. There was history, but I wanted something more. I didn't just want a story within a story that added to this mythology. I wanted to actually be able to understand it, and sadly I didn't. It's the only Maggie Stiefvater book that I've never finished. I really love her books. I love the Raven Boys series. I love the Shiver trilogy. Sadly, this one wasn't for me. And then the final book that I read during September was Ross Poldark by Winston Graham, which is the first book in the Poldark series. I love the TV show. It's one of my favourite things on TV. In fact, it is my favourite TV programme, and so I was really fascinated to read the books. And somebody did request that I talk about the books in relation to the TV series, so I'm going to read book 2 after this and then do a book to TV comparison and start a little series up on my channel, because I just love them. I think that the TV series is the best thing on TV. I love the camera work, I love the story that's created, I love the script, and I love the actors, so everything about it is perfect in my opinion. And the book was really interesting to read because you know the story if you've watched the TV series, but you get it in so much detail in the book that it really jogs your mind and also adds to that story that you were told. So you find out backstory, you find out more about Ross's father in this, you find out all sorts of little bits and pieces that you can't fit into that hour slot on TV. For those of you who don't know the books or the TV series, it follows a man called Ross Poldark who comes back to Cornwall after being away in America during the war, where he's injured, and so he comes back, and he comes back into this world that has changed around him. So he had this fling with a girl called Elizabeth who is now married to his cousin. There's a lot of socio-political history in here, and I thought that I was going to get quite bored with the mining, but actually I really enjoyed finding out the history of the mines and how the mines work, which is not something you get to see in the TV series as much. The mine definitely plays a part in it, but not as much a part as it does in this first book. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that continues in later books. I just thought it was really interesting, really fascinating, just a real sense of history that comes through in this. I really loved Winston Graham's writing and how lyrical and beautiful it was, and I can't wait to read the next book, which is Demelza's book. I love Demelza, she's one of my favourite characters, and she was very different in the book, but I'll talk about that more in my future video all about the books.